Hello and welcome to Focus 54, your real guide to African news. I'm your host, Prudence Mutimbanyoka, and today we are casting a spotlight on a unique manifest that happened recently as the U.S. military aircraft landed in Eswatini, carrying 5 convicted criminals from non-African countries, a move that has sparked a global outrage and debate, raising serious questions about Africa's role in international deportation policies. While some see it as quite a diplomatic arrangement, others argue it reflects deeper power imbalances and ethical concerns. In this discussion, we aim to unpack what this development means for Africa, and I will be joined by a political analyst, Mr. Elton Ziki, to dissect this issue. But for now, let's take a look at the stories making the headlines across the continent. We kickstart with Zimbabwe as the country taking a leading role in ending food shortages, enabling global South nations to shed outdated associations with hunger and deprivation and instead become true examples of economic growth, thanks to major advancements in agriculture, climate adaptation, and harvesting. Last month, Lesotho, Malawi, and Mozambique, Namibia, Zambia, as well as Zimbabwe were all removed from the list of global hunger hotspots by representatives of the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. Patrice Tala, FAO Sub-Regional Coordinator for Southern Africa and representative in Zimbabwe, paid tribute to the region's robust harvest strategic policy support and strengthened response mechanisms. He highlighted Zimbabwe's Pfumvudza Intwesa program, which promotes conservation agriculture practices such as planting basins, mulching, and crop diversification to improve yields. He also noted that increased investment in infrastructure such as irrigation and transport has made a significant impact. Many countries in Southern Africa are now trying to adapt to the Pfumvudza model, having witnessed its success. Tala also pointed to investments in data and forecasting systems that enable real-time meteorological forecast, crop assessments and food security monitoring, allowing farmers to plan their planting activities more effectively. And now in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa strongly condemned what he described as Israel's deliberate starvation of civilians in Gaza, calling for an immediate end to the ongoing blockade during the 2025 Liberation Movement Summit held in Johannesburg on Monday. This comes after Israel has kept all border crossings into Gaza closed for more than 4 months, halting the delivery of food, medicine and humanitarian aid, and rejecting international calls for a ceasefire. Israel has denied responsibility for any famine in enclave, with government spokesperson David Munster blaming Hamas and claiming the shortages are man-made and claim the militants a claim that the militants group denies. According to the United States Children's Funds, more than 2.4 million people in Gaza, including 1.1 million children, are at risk of famine due to the Israeli closure of border crossings. Last but not least, in Ghana, where the descendants of enslaved Africans returned to key slave trade sites in northern Ghana to reconnect with their ancestral roots, retracing the path once taken by the captive ancestors from villages like Noka to the slave markets in Salaga. Naomi Adams, queen mother of Kakoshi village, discovered her family ties to slavery while researching for a university paper. She found her great-great-grandfather's name in a New Orleans census, leading her to a slave listing. Local guides, often descendants of families linked to the market, lead tours and share historical insights into the history of the slave trade. Located on Africa's west coast, Ghana was at the center of the British slave trade for 150 years. More than 15 million people fell victim to the transatlantic slave trade over a span of 400 years. Well, that's all we had for you in this segment. Join us in our second segment, where we are going to discuss our topic today on the third country deportation policy. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Focus 54. I'm still your host, Prudence Mutimba, and we are now joined by a political analyst, Elton Ziki, to help us understand the recent unique developments in Eswatini, where 5 criminals from Europe were deported to the country, a move that has sparked outrage across the world. Welcome to the studio, Say.
Thank you for having me.
Now, on the 16th of July, U.S. military plane carrying 5 deportees, none of them African, landed in Eswatini, raising global concerns. What has played out since then, politically and diplomatically?
Thank you, Prudence. The incident that occurred in Eswatini, to put it bluntly, is quite disturbing. And to get to your inquisition of the reactions that has transpired over the period from the 16th of July is quite varied. And the disturbing issue is that as thought leaders and individuals who have continued to focus on the development of Africa's governance processes and acceptance within the global structure of the world order, you would want to see that this is at the front line of new developments that have emerged on the African continent, and these are fairly new in terms of the developments. And this starts within less than a decade and a half ago with the discussion between the UK and Rwanda to accept asylum seekers that are not originally from the country of deportation. And in this case, it's a euphemistic approach to say third countries. I would view it as a derogatory term to say third world countries, hiding under the term third countries. So the reactions have been quite varied, as I've indicated earlier on. But the danger is that there's not been enough time for African thinkers, philosophers, and also social scientists to be able to reckon and pay attention to the fact that this is a developing issue, and the implications and ramifications thereof need to be further looked into. As well as from a continental point of view and a regional point of view, and our ethos as Africans to say that in the SADC region we are focused largely on implementing decisions that are based on the collectivism of governance. And with regard with the Kingdom of Eswatini and the underlying currents of its acceptance of these deportees, first and foremost, you want to see that there is an element of, if I may say, of belittling and taking Africa as a place that, as a continent that is on second fiddle.
As a dumping site.
As a dumping site. But I mean, that term in terms of dumping site, what are we saying when we are talking of dumping site? No, Africa is not a dumping site. You know, remember, to a large extent, I as an individual who has come across very and varied issues regards Africa's place in the 21st century and even with the centuries that have passed and gone by. You know, Africa at times is complicit in terms of how we are treated by the global north. So this calls for further investigation and further input in terms of those that rely on advising and giving guidance to those that are in
African leaders
in positions of authority, and those that run administrations of countries, to say that decisions, when they are made, first and foremost in the spirit and ethos of Africanism, Ubuntu, collectivism, we are in SADC, and if there was inclusion also with regards with the SADC chair to get input and guidance, there would also have been input from SADC African countries. So the reaction largely is that people feel belittled. African countries feel that it is not proper from a diplomatic point of view to say, how would you accept to receive and in your care have criminals, convicted criminals.
Maybe with that background, let's talk about the relationship. What kind of a relationship does the US have with Eswatini that would allow a military aircraft to deliver such a controversial and unique manifest?
This is a complex situation that is obtaining, because you must be aware that of late the Trump administration's policy, not only with Eswatini, with people of color, as a racial background, they are averse in terms of their relationship with people of color and places of their origin. And you must also be aware with the conduct that the Trump administration has had with the Republic of South Africa, of which Eswatini is within the territorial boundaries of South Africa and Mozambique. This relationship that we may see as if it is cordial, even if diplomatic files state that there is cordial relationship or warm relationship, I would like to view this relationship as that which presents itself in a very skewed and unbalanced in the favor of the US. And the weight largely is bearing its brunt on the kingdom of Eswatini. But as I have highlighted earlier on in the previous presentation, it is a situation where you see that according to the press secretary of the United States, the office of the press secretary, it states that there has been discussions over quite a period of time with the leadership and governance structure of the monarchy of the kingdom of Eswatini, up until the acceptance of granting airspace and clearance of a military aircraft to deliver and accept the deportation of those criminals. So what we then don't understand at the moment is that what were the enticements that
were they
presented?
forced, or was it?
What were the promises that were given to the kingdom of Eswatini? And as I've said, if people seek to appease the Trump administration at the moment, they do so at their own peril.
At their own risk.
We've seen his conduct even with his kith and kin within Europe, where he has indicated left and turned right. What more people of color? What more the black population? What more a third world country? As you rightly put, Prudence.
Okay, we are discussing about the issue of a third country deportation. Eswatini just received 5 criminals. What are the implications? Stay tuned for our next segment as we discuss more on this. Welcome back to Focus 54. This is our third segment, and we're discussing about the implications, the concerns surrounding the 5 deportees in Eswatini, the criminals from Europe. So, Trump's administration has long championed a hardline immigration policy, and in this case, seems to reflect a broader strategy of offloading unwanted individuals into vulnerable or diplomatically dependent African countries. How should we interpret this in the broader context of U.S. foreign policy toward Africa?
What is key, Prudence? First and foremost, we must view this occurrence from a security point of view and also a social implication, as well as the underlying threats that may result in so-called unwanted criminals that have been deported to third world countries. First and foremost, it could be a strategy from a security point of view to have their implanted personnel within the African territory.
Okay.
So what you may see as a criminal may be a covert operation that is taking place.
All right.
And this is why I continue to implore and respectfully call upon the increased awareness within the political leadership in African states to say, from a broad macro point of view, we should not, as an African continent, continue to allow asylum seekers that are not from the particular country of origin.
Yes.
There are cultural implications. You have Jamaicans, you have Cubans, or Mexicans, or whatever, is within the outline of the five so-called deportees.
Yes.
We have committed various crimes that are abominable. Some are murderers, and some have been euphemized to say if they are homicidal. And what are we going to do as remedial, recorrectional, and rehabilitation efforts? What are we going to be doing as the correctional prison services of the African continent? So apart from security threats, apart from cultural inversion and acceptance of those that will have committed serious crimes, hardened criminals that have become a pain to the U.S. penitentiary system, what more will the African prison correctional system do to correct those individuals?
Okay, so let's talk about sovereignty. Is Africa safe? Isn't this a violation of our sovereignty, or maybe just a political opportunism?
I think it is a double-edged sword. There is vulnerability, and there is also opportunism that you present. But we also have to be asking ourselves very pertinent questions. As I've said, what is the culmination that took place in order for that military plane to have been cleared to land
in Eswatini,
within the airspace and territory of Eswatini? What were the grounds? But this vulnerability at the same time, let me also not spare the rod. African leaders tend sometimes to be complicit for whatever various trinkets or favors that they will assume will accrue from the Trump administration.
Also, let me hold you there. Are you saying African leaders are trading human safety or the country's sovereignty or safety for favors?
There's a possibility, because what else would you, how else and why else would you accept to have deportees that are not your nationals?
Okay.
They should be underlying benefit that those particular countries would be having. With Rwanda, there was even a price of 3,500 being offered by the UK government to accept asylum seeker to be accommodated within the territory of Rwanda, irrespective of the fact that those people do not hail from Rwanda as a country of origin. So in this case, what then are we going to be talking about? Are these inmates or these convicted criminals going to be in a prison system? But of course, from information that has been presented thus far from the acting spokesperson of Eswatini, they present a scenario where they are going to be in incarceration, in solitary confinement of some nature. But for what benefit?
But why couldn't they do that back in US?
This is the question that that we are all seeking to address, to say, why is the US doing that?
Doesn't it have those solitary confinements?
You see, the US penitentiary system is known to have such solitary confinement. But here, remember, I've been talking to you of covert operations that may be underlying. Because these people can be implants, can be plants of various missions on the African territory.
Okay, so what are you saying about the accountability in some African governments when negotiating with these powerful states?
I think Africa needs to have this approach of collective accountability, where there is interface between and amongst state, especially in the context of SADC, and consultation, especially with the sitting chair or any other countries that may have upper hand in terms of diplomatic prowess, and also understanding the psyche of the Trump administration, which is to a large extent quite, in terms of its approach, intimidating to people of color, in terms of being racist, and that is very clear. When these discussions when these discussions of acceptance of immigrants are taking place, they are bordering on racial superiority and also African inferiority.
Okay.
So we need to strike a balance where we are not complicit as Africans. We should be assertive in terms of our approach, in understanding the global world superstructure, how it is structured, so that at the end of the day, when we make decisions, we make informed decisions, and also have intellectual systems of think tanks that interrogate systems of implication to governance and territorial integrity and sovereignty of the African states. And let me just quickly point out that at the moment there is a drive in the global structure to do away with the territorial and individual sovereignty of states. That's why we are always diverting and moving towards this global and free trade approach. So that affects the localized governance system.
So we are talking about foreign nationals with no legal right of return are offloaded in African states. What risks emerge from these individuals and the host country?
Can you come again?
What recent
emerged? What did you?
We are saying what risks emerge from both individuals, those individuals, the deportees, and the receiving country.
Look, they are coming into a system and into a place that they've not have a chance to acclimatize to. They don't know the cultural norms, the standards and ways of living within Eswatini. Remember, Eswatini and Africa are largely cultural state. Is a largely cultural state, including the bulk of Africa. We are a homogeneous entity in terms of accepting that we must be who we are as Africans and determine how we live. So the risks, as I have said, here is a hardened core criminal who has been committing crime. There is that obvious potential risk that once a criminal, always a criminal, and they'll repeat. If they were murderers, they'll probably harm someone even in a prison setup.
Okay, so as we round up, we are running out of time. So in a few seconds, what's your final take?
My final take and my position is that African leaders must be alive to current and developing and emerging issues such as this, and create an approach to carefully and systematically, if not scientifically, study the implications of such actions, and also increase their security, sovereignty, and strength within their borders. To say if there's any decision that is to be made from the global north, there should be fair and wide consultations within member states to also give advice and input as to what further decision to take.
Thank you so much for sharing such rich insights there.
You're welcome.
So African leaders should be wary and should be able to agree on these policies before they engage the global north. Join us next in our next episode, same time, same place. I'm Prudence Mutimba Nyoka. Stay blessed.